for tuning in to the Inside Maumee Athletics podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Schneider. We're already on our third episode. I can't believe it. These last 3 weeks have been a whirlwind. The response we've gotten has been tremendous, so thank you. We always want to hear from you. If you have any feedback or questions, you can email me at insidemaumeeathletics@gmail.com. Now, yes, we're 2 weeks into the IMA podcast, and I've got to say, we're 2 for 2 on great guests. Evan Karchner and Cam Kuchar have been fantastic. And before we go 3 for 3 with this week's guest, girls soccer coach Jeremiah McNutt, let's take a look at results from last week on our Panthers Rewind. We'll start off with boys soccer and their record-breaking captain, Blake Wagener. The senior put in 2 goals in the first half against Oak Harbor during a 4-0 win, the second of which made him the first Maumee player to ever reach 100 goals in his career. So congratulations to Blake. Noah Preciado also added 2 tallies for the Panthers in that win. Wagener now has 18 goals and 43 points this season, and Maumee has yet to give up a goal to an NBC team since joining the conference last season. The boys are now 8-0 overall and 4-0 in the conference. The football team fell to 3-1 last week with the 56-17 loss to Oak Harbor. The Panthers trailed 28-17 at halftime before the Rockets poured on 4 scores in the second half. Ben Kubitz threw for 221 yards, and Carson Greats had season highs in catches with 7 and yards with 125. The volleyball team took a couple of huge steps in the Northern Buckeye Conference last week with wins over Eastwood and Fostoria. In the 3-2 win over the Eagles, Autumn Draper had 15 kills, Kennedy King had 11 kills, 4 aces, and 2 blocks, and Sydney Janot added 8 kills and 4 aces. Brooke Kwiatkowski had 29 assists, 11 digs, 6 aces, and 3 blocks. Kirsten Green led the team with 13 digs. The Panthers are now 4-5 overall and 4-2 in the NBC, so watch out for the Panthers. Maumee girls soccer team battled to a 1-1 tie with visiting Oak Harbor last week. Trailing 1-0 late in the game, Charlie Bischoff put in a goal to even the score. The Panthers are now 2-5-2 overall and 1-1-1 in the conference. The boys golf team sure was busy last week, picking up a pair of dual wins and finishing second at the NBC shootout. The Panthers beat Rossford 179-190 on senior night. Senior Zach Morris had a 44, and senior Jeremy Anderson 1L had a 45. Antonio Valadez and JJ Peace also had 45s. Morris carded a 39 as the Panthers beat Springfield 173-212. Anderson 1L had a 43, Peace had a 44, and Valadez had a 47. Maumee also finished second at the 4th NBC shootout with a 170 team score. Valadez had a 39 to lead the way. Morris and Peace both had 43s, and Tommy Parker added a 45. And that's a look at the last week in Maumee athletics. This week's guest on the IMA podcast has been coaching girls soccer at Maumee since 2019. Before coming to Maumee, he coached at St. John's, Central Catholic, and Owens Community College. He steadily built the girls' program back into a consistent winner and a force on the soccer pitch. They've won back-to-back district championships, and they're in the hunt for their 3rd straight this year. Here's our conversation with Jeremiah McNutt. There's a lot of talk about the girls this year being 2-time district champions. There's a lot of pressure on that, a lot of expectations with that. What have you seen from your girls through the preseason and now you're about midway through the season now? What have you seen from them to make you believe, to make you know that they've got a shot at a third straight district title? What are they doing on the field? What are they doing elsewhere?
So a lot of people are going to think about this and think, how is that a positive? But seeing their emotional sides to everything, the way it's happening, the close games that we've been having, the reactions after the games have shown a lot more. Usually you don't see the kind of reaction that they're giving until the very last game of the season when it's over in the tournament.
Okay.
So it's been, very emotional, especially from the seniors who have been through it for 4 years now. Yeah. So I think that's a great sign that they know how hard it is and that they don't want it to end, is what I see early in the season instead of the very last day.
Sure. Do you think it's something that they feel that, I don't want to say pressure, but that sense of duty, that sense of, hey, there's something here that we need to uphold. There's this tradition that the other senior classes have started that we're not going to be that class to let this go away?
I think that, and I think that they know what it was like their freshman year.
Oh, yeah,
and,
sure.
Their freshman year, they know exactly what it was like, being knocked out early, not having very many wins,
right?
And now they had 2 years of that experience, of double-digit wins and winning big games and playing until November and things like that. And I think they might be, I haven't talked to them officially about it, but it seems like they might be a little scared. Like their season might come to an end early.
Right.
And they don't want it this time.
Right. We've talked about it a little bit, the schedule. I know you guys have 2 wins through this point, but I said it in a story. Sometimes you can't judge a team based upon the number of wins, and I think that's very true with this team, because you look at Northview, you look at some of the teams that you've played, and you've definitely set up this schedule to test these girls and get them ready for the postseason, and that's the point, right?
Yes. Yep. Everyone always asks me why we play such a hard schedule. We've played a hard schedule since I've gotten here. I just wanted them to be ready, right? To see what's coming, to know what they need to improve on, to see that it's not an easy cakewalk. In my past coaching, I was on a team that had an unbeaten regular season, and we lost in the second round of the tournament. Does you no good do you go 15-0-1 and then lose in the second round of the tournament. Right. So it's it's hard. It's hard for a player if they haven't experienced that loss to lose that very last game. If it's not in a state title game, which would still be hurt, but at least you made it to the final 2. Right. So to see an undefeated season or an unbeaten season is always not the best thing to go into a tournament with. Right.
You want the girls to taste that loss, to know what that feels like.
Yeah, to know what that heartbreak feels like, and not want to have it happen during the tournament.
So what do you need to see from the girls? What do you want to see from the girls over these next 2 weeks to get ready for this postseason? Because postseason games are much different than regular season games. So what do you need to see from them to know that they're ready?
Just to keep their confidence up, to keep reminding them that we are being hunted this year. As I keep saying, we are the team that everyone's looking to beat. We are the feather in everyone's cap. Yeah. So to let them realize that is how it is now. We are the ones being tracked. So just to keep them going and keep their heads up. That's why it's practice sometimes is a lot lighter. After games, especially hard losses, sometimes a little bit lighter. Sure. After Genoa game, it was just a practice of just team building. Okay. Different fun games that we played just to try and get them all up and keep their spirits up. It's most laughter I've heard all season. Oh, that's good. Practice, so that's good. That helps with it, and that keeps their heads in the game. Yeah. And then we'll just go from there. We got some games coming up that should be winnable. So, hopefully those ones will help get us into the postseason. How
important is that to keep the laughter, to keep the attitudes good? Because, you and I can sit here and everybody can say, yeah, it makes sense to play these tough games to get ready for the postseason. But if you're a 14 to 18-year-old high school student, you can know that, but it's much different to go through it. So for you, how important is it to keep them laughing, to keep them in good spirits?
You keep them in good spirits, but, keep them moving forward is always a tough thing, but it's needed, especially in today's day of coaching high school kids. It's been a long 28 seasons for me now, so you see everything. It's gone up and down in different ways you have to do it, but just keeping them focused, let them to know that the tough games were there, like I tell them every year, and they do see it afterwards, is with the bigger schools, the game is much faster.
Right.
And then we get into our regular games, we get into the tournament, it tends to slow down a little bit. So they're able to think a little bit, they don't have to worry about how fast it's going. So, that's one reason to do it. But it's just to keep them upbeat, try and keep them up a little bit, keep them believing in themselves and believing in each other.
The Maumee Athletic Boosters for their continued support of the IMA podcast and website. If you're interested in supporting the students at Maumee High School and Maumee Middle School, you should consider getting involved with the Boosters. Their next meeting is Wednesday, October the 2nd at 7 p.m. in the High School Learning Commons. Also, be on the lookout for athletes selling golf balls for the Gold Card Drone Drop, happening during the soccer doubleheader against Central Catholic on October the 10th. You can purchase one ball for $25, two for $40, or five for $75. The winner walks away with $599 in cold hard cash. Second place is $400, and third place gets an awesome Yeti cooler package. So one of the cool things I think about this is Maumee is turning into, and maybe already is, a soccer school. You've got a really good boys program. You've got a really good girls program. I know you've talked about it a few times, but the little rivalry between the two. I know you guys are going for your third straight district title. Boys haven't reached that. So how do you see a rivalry between the two, and how does that help the programs?
Well, I see it, and the coaching staff sees it as a rivalry.
Yeah.
I see it mainly as a rivalry because, we started up first. Right. We got that first one and then that second one. But we don't make it look pretty. We just play our game. Yeah. We don't mind a 1-0 game. And so it doesn't look as exciting for some people. But overall, to have them chasing behind and having the regular seasons that they've been having and a district title for, in the tournament, pushes us. Right. We're not only fighting against just the current boys team, but now we're fighting against the 2005-06 around that year season with Coach Calkins and going for 3 straight, district titles. We want to be just as good as the boys. That's what I see things. I like to see it as soccer, which, sometimes I bring up to some new referees when some calls are made, and I've watched the boys' game and then the girls' game, and I'm like, are we refereeing soccer, or are we refereeing girls' soccer right now? Okay. Because this is just a sport. Yeah. I teach them to play just to play. Right. And sometimes it's a little physical than what some people like. I know there's some people that probably don't like the way that I have them play. But it is a rivalry because it's two soccer teams bidding for that one top spot. Right. And in my opinion, it is. I don't know how much the girls feel it is. I think they do, but they might not say a whole lot about it. Okay. But overall, I wish them the best of luck. It helps push us even harder, or it helps push at least me harder. Yeah. To make sure the girls stay on top. Which isn't always the case. In today's society still, girls are starting to get more recognition in sports, but they're still not quite there yet. Right. And I want them to be able to push through. And I tell them I push them so hard because there still is a glass ceiling for women in the workplace. Yeah. And so I want them to be like a boss they come up against, be like, you're nothing compared to what my coach was. And I'm going to push right through this ceiling, and you're not going to stop me. Yeah. So that's why I push them as hard as I do, and that's why sometimes people might think, well, you treat them too much like boys, you push them too hard like boys. But in my opinion, especially in today's world, as they leave here, they go to college, and they break into the workforce, there's still that ceiling, and unfortunately, it's there. And I just want them to be able to push through it and, know that they can compete with any of the men that are in there when they get older and, push past them. So I guess that's why I push it as a rivalry with the guys right now is just to let them know that they shouldn't settle for second. Yeah. As they get older, too. Don't settle for a VP job when you can be the president of the job. So, and that's what I tell them once in a while. Push that ceiling. We're going to push this ceiling right now. We're going to be better than the boys. Yeah. have them push us. So that's where I kind of see the rivalry. I think it's the first time I've actually kind of explained it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But, you know, and some people might think, boy, he's more philosophical than we thought. Thinking of the future, you know, and what politically what the girls go through as they get older, you know. So,
no, absolutely.
You know, that's why we have a rivalry, in my opinion. Yeah. You know, to help them be ready for their life. Yeah.
Well, as the father of a girl who played 3 sports at Maumee, volleyball, basketball, track, softball, I really respect that. I really get that and understand that because, you know, now Evelyn's down at Ohio Northern and she's taking some really difficult classes and she's involved in a lot of different things. That influence that you're giving those girls as a strong coach, as a strong male, telling them to do these things, I think goes beyond soccer and is invaluable. So kudos to you for that. I really think that's fantastic.
I mean, I'm going to just, you know, mention something like, from what I'm hearing, like Charlie Bischoff is at Penna in their fire department.
Yeah.
And from what I'm hearing, she's, if not the top, is the top student.
That's awesome.
And, you know, that's a female in a male-dominated area.
Yeah.
So, and that's not all from me. That's her own.
Right.
But that's what we need to see more. We need to see more of, you know, females pushing themselves through in male-dominated areas.
Yeah.
You know, and she's just a prime example of that. You know, from what I hear, she's just doing great over there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what we need. And that's why I push the girls so hard, so that hopefully the ones that might not see that potential, you know, eventually see it as they get older.
You know, that's one of the reasons why I love sports so much, is that, yes, it's about the wins and losses and the numbers that appear on the scoreboard and the district championships and all those things. But when you really drill down to it, there's so much that high school kids, and even younger than that, but we'll talk about high school kids, can pull from this, that they can bring into their later years. Because I guarantee you there's girls who played soccer for you. My daughter can say the same thing, that there's lessons that they've learned from their coaches and from their sports that apply to everything.
Yeah, I mean, not just on the girl side, but even on the guy side, I sometimes have, you know, guys come up to me years later, you know, and say, if we'd have just listened when you were actually telling us when we were in high school playing, you know, when we got older, we saw it.
Yeah.
You know, how you pushed and everything. So, you know, they come back, and I hear that every once in a while. So it's always a good thing that, you know, even though you might be a little hard on them sometimes, that eventually, you know, male or female, it comes back to help in the future. And that's always a good thing to hear.
So you've coached for 28 years. Okay. Club, high school, you even started a college program out in Colorado. How has the sport changed in that time? What have you seen differences, different styles of play, different interests, different numbers, different ways of dealing with kids? What have you seen that's changed in the sport of soccer during those almost 3 decades?
I think, the main thing is the way that you can approach players.
Okay.
I think you have to be, don't want to sound rude about it, but you have to be a little bit more sensitive with the times the way they are. You know, when I played and stuff like that, it was a lot different. So I played for Coach Kane, and after playing for him and then coming back and seeing him coach more up close after 25 years, he's changed a lot because times have changed.
Yeah.
We used to do a lot of different things, and you didn't go home and say anything. If you did, your parents said, "What'd you do?"
Exactly. Yeah.
Or they said, "Yes, you played. That's how you guys played in the game." So yeah, I'm not surprised you did that.
Yeah.
You know, and nowadays it's just a little different when it comes to that. So you just have to be a little bit. You just have to change with the times.
Yeah.
You know, used to be a little bit hard. I used to be a little bit harder. You know, a little bit. Well, some people think I'm still very strict.
Right.
But I just like to have a well set up, so everybody knows what's going on and everything. But I'm still able to do that. It's just the way that maybe you talk and some of the practices that you do.
Okay.
Some of the fun games that we used to play would now be considered probably borderline abuse. So that's how things have changed a little bit. But overall, I don't think the game has changed very much.
Okay.
I like to study a lot of the game, and people have told me recently that I'm a very big student of the game, which is a little different than what people are used to.
Right.
So I'm constantly watching things. If you go on my phone right now, I was doing it all weekend before this, there's tons of reels on different practices, different goalkeeping stuff, and then I'll go back and I'll use something. So that's where I think it's a little bit different, and the technology has changed.
Yeah.
So, like this past year, I got a little certificate in cognitive motor training.
Yeah.
So I used it with the girls all July.
Yeah.
They weren't quite ready for it. It is very intense.
Yeah.
You have to think a lot, and you have to react, and it's constantly changing. So they say that the cognitive side is the side to go into. So I've been doing a lot more research on it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit expensive to get it started, but overall, I think that's probably the biggest change is being more of a mental side.
With club sports, every kid that plays soccer seems to play, or the top level kids at least, seem to play some sort of club or some sort of travel ball in the off season. Was that true back when you were playing? Because I don't remember it being that big.
Well, around here at that time when I played almost 30 years ago when I was playing club, there was only 2 teams in the Toledo area. And then there's a couple offshoot teams for the players that wanted to keep playing but didn't want to travel a whole lot. But they were still at a high level.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, there's teams everywhere. Yeah. And my opinion is a little watered down. Because good players don't want to leave their friends and the small communities like they used to, and the cost has gone up. So recently my daughter played last year. She played with the Pace Setters. You're looking at cost of not only fees, but you're looking at uniforms and everything, and then you're looking at travel to tournaments. So she played in showcases, so we didn't play in tournaments, we played in showcases, which meant we played one game a day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you have to take off a day of work to go to it, because we played at 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday sometimes. So it's a lot more dedication now, I believe, if you want to play at the big high levels, because you're going to travel a lot more. Sure. Which means the cost goes up because the coaching has gotten higher. Right. There's more higher coaches. They've played more. They've got more license. They've got more experience. Right. So the cost to pay them has gone up. Right. So to play at the bigger levels, unfortunately, the price sometimes gets a little high for some people to participate in.
Do you feel like kids are coming into high school sports, high school soccer, a little more prepared than they were in the past because of that experience? Or you did say you feel like it's watered down. Do you feel like it's not making that big of a difference?
Personally, for me, I think it's not really making a huge difference, because also more kids are playing more than one sport. Right. So they're not traveling as much. Right. Because they're choosing to play 3-4 sports. Yeah. So it's watered it down. I think with it too, like I said, and so the high expectation isn't as high as it used to be unless you're at one of the really big schools. Sure. If you're at a big high school, most of those kids, that's all they do is play travel soccer, or it's their top priority, and if they're running track, it's secondary, and if they don't make it, they don't make it to track. Right. It's all about playing the sport. So at the bigger schools, you can see the level still going high, but as the schools get smaller, you can see that we're being spread out more. Yeah. And the level's still there, and it's staying competitive, but playing with the big schools, you can see the difference just by how much they travel and how much they all play together. Okay, so as a coach at Maumee, obviously because Maumee is the size of school where kids do play multiple sports, and some would argue that they need to play multiple sports to keep Maumee athletics relevant. How do you deal with that as a coach at a school the size of Maumee? Well, when I first came in, I wanted everybody to play travel. Right. I wanted everybody to play more. Right. I wanted more and more, because I knew that's what was needed to be at the top levels. Over the course of the 6 years, I've gone down. I've pushed back on it. I'm not, I want them to play, but I understand that they might not be. Yes, we don't do as much off-season stuff, but that's, in my opinion, so that they can concentrate on playing playing basketball or getting ready for track or playing softball. So with us being small and everyone playing more than one sport, it's hard for me, I believe, to do a whole thing together with them and only have 6 people show up. Now you're saying, well, 6 are getting extra work. Yes, they are, but they're not getting the whole gambit of everything. Sure. So why people might wonder why I don't do as much lifting in the off season, or I don't do as much extra little play in the off season. The girls play indoor because they choose to. This year, I'm thinking we may do a little more lifting now that Maumee has gone to a strength and conditioning coach who I've already spoke with that will build things around each individual sport. So I think it's a great start for Maumee to be able to get, especially those players that only play soccer, to be able to do things in the extra off season. So we'll see how it goes, but, overall, like I said, I came from a bigger school to a smaller school, wanted it to be strictly soccer, but eventually you have to change with things, and I believe I did, so we don't push it as much to play. Last year, I think we had 6 girls who played, which was more than we've had ever the whole time I've been here, but they also did their extra stuff. They also did their other things, too.
We're extremely lucky to have the Pride of the Panthers helping us make memories for our students. There aren't many communities or schools who have a group of talented photographers at almost all of our kids' events and games. You can follow them on Facebook by searching Pride of the Panthers. So the nature of high school sports is you don't get kids for more than 4 years. If you're lucky, if they're really good, you get them for 4 years on varsity. You might get them for 2 or 3. You've lost a couple really talented senior classes these last 2 years, and then this year is another big talented senior class. So talk about the idea of starting over every year with a new batch of kids and maybe a new batch of strengths and weaknesses. How does that affect what you do as a high school coach?
Well, because I've been labeled as a student of the game, I'm always looking. And even throughout the year, even the last 2 years, we've run several different formations depending on how a game is going. Yeah. So changing games for strengths and weaknesses during a game is not uncommon for me. And it is hard and stressful, but, January 1st, I give myself a month after the season's over, 2 months, after the season's over, and then I try to give myself that long, and I'm already thinking about who's coming in, what we have, what freshmen we could have, who could step into what spots, who may have to switch to different spots. So I'm constantly thinking about that and the different ways of playing. Like last year, we played our regular formation that we were trying to play. We got picked apart by Notre Dame, so we got picked apart through the middle. So we switched and we moved to a 4-4-2, but we played everybody in the middle, which is totally off the books for everybody else. Yeah, we had no wingers and no one could understand what we were doing, but it worked for us. Yeah. This year we switched back. We're not moving it as much like quick touches and like that class had, so we had to change it a little bit. Yeah. So we're trying a different thing this year. And with that comes the bumps and bruises of a 1-0 loss games that we've been having. But I think once it clicks with the girls, which you're starting to see it click more and more in each game, that hopefully by the tournament time is when it 100% clicks and we're able to move forward with it. So in those kind of games, you always have to change. Yeah. In our loss against Salina, it was 0-0, and I was like, let's go for the win. Yeah. And unfortunately we got a PK with 30 seconds left against us, but we went for the win, which most teams would be like, well, we're not doing too well right now, let's stay with the tie. Yeah. But when it comes to us, if it's a tie, you can usually probably look down and you'll see some kind of formation change because, ties are nice, but wins are better. Yeah. And if you're going to tie, it's not really helping you a whole bunch more than a loss. A loss is going to hurt probably a little bit more, so it might work in your advantage. Right. To go for that. But overall, to your question, every year it changes. Like you said, sometimes you might get them for 4 years. Usually you're getting them for about 2, maybe 3, because they may be good their freshman year. But as I've told to some players coming into their parents, you got to remember your daughter is up as high for a 14-year-old, but now they're going to be playing against 18-year-old women, and when you tell them that, they're like, I never thought of that. So that's why they come home with more bruises. That's why they come home more beat up, and stuff, because they're just not used to it. So it takes them a year or two, to mature and to get used to it, and then they can step into it again. You know, it's really hard. Same thing on the boys' side. It's hard to have a 14-year-old come in unless they're just phenomenal.
Sure.
To be able and have been playing up their whole life anyhow and been beat on by older kids.
Right.
To be able to play 14-year-old boys versus 18-year-old men, 14-year-old girls versus 18-year-old women.
Yeah.
You know, and most people don't think about that until they don't see seniors as women until you say 18-year-old women, adults.
Yeah.
So it's always constantly changing. Getting players to play different positions, you know, then you got to teach them a whole new spot. So, but that's the part of the game I love. I love the technical and tactical side of the game.
So coming into the NBC from the NLL, I was one of the people that was trying to make sure everybody knew, hey, this isn't for league titles. We're not coming in there to poach league titles. It's not easy. But your girls and the boys team kind of proved me wrong right there. With the conference championship included in this. But overall, how do you think the move from the NLL to the NBC has been specifically for girls soccer at Maumee?
Well, some people, you know, might disagree with how I feel about it, but as soon as we said we were coming over, and people were like, oh, it's going to be easier, it's going to be better for us. I told everybody that girls soccer is not going to be easier.
No.
Girls soccer has been tops. You know, Eastwood had won it. It still has because they won it last year, split it with us.
Yeah.
They've won it like 6 years in a row.
Yeah.
They're a top team now.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. Some sports, yes, it's going to be much easier.
Sure.
But in girls soccer, I knew it wasn't going to be. I knew with Eastwood being there. I knew with Oak Harbor coming in because we were playing them before.
Right.
We both moved over.
Right.
So I knew it was not going to be easy. People are like, oh, well, you should have a conference title. Or you should have an NBC title. I'm like, no, it's not guaranteed for what we're playing against.
Right.
You know, the same thing this year. You know, you got Eastwood up there again. Oak Harbor, we just played to a 1-1 tie. That's always 1-1, 1-0, either way.
Yeah.
And then, you know, this year Genoa has stepped it up. You know, they're like, I think 6-1-1 or something like that. So they've stepped it up. So the girls' side is extremely hard.
Yeah.
You know, NLL, with it going to 2 divisions, I think we probably could have done better if we would have stayed. But I do understand with us leaving, with it being, you know, what was only being talked about at the time. But, you know, for the NBC, you know, it's not that easy. There are some big schools out there that in certain sports, those are their sports.
Yes.
You know, unfortunately, the football team found out about it with Oak Harbor. They still see they have a lot to go.
Yeah.
We still have a lot to go. Just because we split it last year does not mean we're going to win it every year.
Right.
You know, it's something that I think is good for the morale of everybody. And playing in a 1-division NLL was not in our favor. But, you know, NBC, I think, is it's had a lot of positives, I think, especially for the school and for the community.
Yeah.
It's helped help us coaches change the culture.
Yeah.
You know, to more positive side. So, and overall, for everything, I think it was a good move for everybody. But again, like I said, I think it was a good move for us, you know, when it was one NLL league. But at the same time, certain sports are not easy.
Oh, no.
And girls soccer is one of them where it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough every single year.
So that leads into, you know, I've had other coaches mention it where they thought the NLL would get their teams more prepared for a postseason. Turns out that's, you know, they have said that hasn't been true. The NBC does just as good of a job. So do you feel like last year the NBC got this team ready for the postseason? And on top, we'll just start there, and we'll just start with that one.
I think with the race that we were in, because after we lost to Oak Harbor, we had to win all the rest of the games.
Okay.
And depend on everybody else.
Yeah.
I think did help us keep that. And with them going to one game against each other, it puts so much more pressure on you. So it does prepare you for the tournament run.
Sure.
Because it's play well or you're done.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, we lost that one to Oak Harbor. And then we had to go and beat, you know, we had to beat Eastwood. Mm-hmm. You know, Eastwood had to beat Oak Harbor.
Yeah.
You know, so we had to have that. And we had to win that game against Lake.
Yeah.
Which we played a man short for like, I think it was like 25, 30 minutes.
It was most of the second.
Yeah, almost the whole second half. Yeah. We had to play short. And we were still able to come out with a win, score, and come out with a win there.
Yeah.
So that did really help us. And I think them going to one game only instead of a home and away helps put a lot more pressure on teams and will help build them for the tournament.
We're talking about the postseason. How do you see this new realignment of the divisions? How do you see that playing out? Is it a good thing for the sport? Is it a good thing for Maumee? What do you see with this change?
Well, overall, soccer is a totally different beast than any other animal that they have. I don't agree with it being based on size of school. Because we have, again, we'll just use Eastwood, who's in our comp. They're D5. They're way too good to be in D5. They should be able to move up. And then we have other schools. I'm just going to use Whitmer. They're the 7th biggest school for girls in the state.
Wow.
But they only have like 20 girls that play on the team and maybe 3 or 4 that travel.
Sure.
So they can never compete with those big schools like that. It should be more culturally based for soccer.
Okay.
Which means that you'll have to go with more of a rest of the world formation where it's relegations. And you can do it by 2 years, 3 years, whatever you want.
Okay.
Combine those years together, and your bottom 20% go down, your top 20% go up. Because the state's biggest argument I was hearing was that teams were complaining that they couldn't win a first-round game, the smaller ones. Well, guess what? Now those teams that were winning are now the smaller schools. So in 5 years, you're going to have the same argument.
Yep.
We went from having a chance of winning every year to not winning anything for 5 years. So now we want 10 divisions. So it needs to be thought about as more of the global side of it and go by the culture of the area. For us, yes, we are the only team that we've played in the last couple of years in the districts that stayed up. Everybody else is now D4.
Okay.
Your Port Clinton, your Oak Harbor, they all went down one division. They're now the big school down there. And we went from being a middle school to being far enough above the line that we'll probably never go down. Unless other schools get really big, we'll never go down. I think there's going to be issues in about 5-10 years. We're going to have the same issues that they claim are the reasons that they did it this year. Somebody's going to complain that, we were winning games. Now we're not winning games.
Now we're not,
I can see how they did it, but I think that their reasoning on how they split the teams it's not going to work.
The fact that they did something is good, but what they did isn't going to solve it.
It doesn't fit the sport of soccer.
So this is probably my favorite part of the podcast because it gets us to know you as not just coaches but as people a little bit more. So it's the desert island part of the show. First answer that comes to your mind: favorite TV show.
I guess a lot. Whenever I see it on, come across my thing is I like the old show Castle.
Castle.
I watch it and I can watch it. They go through marathons, so sometimes I'll be like, I remember that episode, and sometimes I watched it so much, how do I not? I've never seen that episode, But that seems to be the one right now that when it comes on reruns, it's the one that I hit to watch.
Okay.
There's nothing that I'm planning on watching, and even if there is, if I get stuck on it during a commercial, I might not go back to the show that I was planning on watching. If I haven't seen it before, then I don't go back. So that's probably the top one that I watch right now, especially.
All right. I know we're middle-end-ish of September right now, but Halloween is coming up. So with that in mind, what is your favorite candy?
Even though I'm not supposed to eat them or eat anything like that, like Reese's Cups, I'll eat frozen, regular.
Yep. Last question here. If you could have one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One meal, huh? It'd probably be some kind of meat because I'm a carnivore. If all I eat is meat, meat. So I guess meat is probably where I'd be at with that as a meal. I mean, it's a pretty broad meal, but I don't usually eat a lot of extras with it.
Okay.
Grill it up lightly because I'm medium rare to rare kind of person. So
you want it still mooing?
Yeah, I don't mind it when it does that.
Okay.
I guess meat would be my favorite, really, I guess. The other one, I guess, which isn't good for me either, would be ice cream. It's something I can't get away from. Yeah. Gets me into trouble all the time. And I'm like, I want some, or it's a day in which I just need some. Yep, again, there's the extra shots because it's something that I love, and I haven't been a diabetic my whole life, so my whole life it was something I could eat, and now it's something different that technically I'm not supposed to. Yeah. But I just say, oh, well. That's why they make meds. If I got to pay for them and that's what they make them for, I'll just bring it down. Yeah,
you got to make the sacrifice.
So I would say it would be probably, I guess, favorite foods is like a meat. Okay. Any kind of meat, really, and then ice cream. All right. Something I needed.
Very American of you.
I need to do away with, but I just can't do it.
All right. Well, Jeremiah, thank you very much for coming in today, sitting down with us and speaking with us, and we really appreciate your time.
Yes, I'm glad that we do stuff like this. It's given something new for the community to learn new things and, new times and everything like that. So thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. You can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't always judge a team by its record. McNutt knows his team will be ready to defend its district title when the sectional tournament starts in just a few weeks. Thanks again to Jeremiah for joining the IMA podcast. Now let's end the show with a look at big games coming up this week in Maumee athletics. On Thursday evening, your Maumee middle school football teams play their first home game of the season. They host Eastwood at Kazmaier Stadium. 7th grade starts at 4:15 and 8th grade right after. Also on Thursday, your volleyball teams host Rossford in the Northern Buckeye Conference. Freshmen start at 4:45, JV at 5:30, and varsity is scheduled to start at 7. The Panthers won the first meeting this season 3-0 at Rossford. The girls' tennis team hosts Whitmer on Thursday. Those matches will begin at 4:30 at Shadow Valley. Your varsity football team takes the trip down to Luckey, Ohio for a matchup with Eastwood on Friday night. Kickoff is scheduled for 7 p.m. Eastwood is now 4-0 after last week's 42-0 win over Lake. The Eagles have outscored their opponents 43-10 on average this season. The only event scheduled for Saturday is the JV football team, which hosts Eastwood at Kazmaier Stadium. That game is scheduled for a 10 a.m. kickoff. Monday brings a matchup between two former NLL rivals on the volleyball court as the Panthers host Springfield. Freshman starts at 4:45, JV at 5:45, and varsity at 7. And that's a look at some of the upcoming events on the Maumee Athletics calendar. You've reached the end of another Inside Maumee Athletics podcast. Once again, thanks to Jeremiah McNutt for his time and the great conversation. Good luck to the Panthers the rest of the way. We'll be cheering you on. Thanks again to our sponsors, the Mirror newspaper, the Maumee Athletic Boosters, and Pride of the Panthers photographers. If you'd like to contact the show, you can email us at insidemaumeeathletics@gmail.com. You can also follow us on social media at Inside Maumee Athletics on Facebook and at Inside Maumee ATH on Twitter. Until next week, thanks for listening.